Toni Morrison's Beloved might just be one of the most confusing novels I've ever read, which actually isn't true anymore because I'm reading Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, and that is very confusing. But regardless, especially for someone like me who has never read any of her books before, you might step into this novel believing it'll leave you with an immediate change. But for those like me, you might not see that change until a second or third read of this book, and even then, you might still be confused. There are some moments of this book that just don't mesh well together, and not in a bad way, just in a first read sort of way, where you need to reread that passage again and again and try to really think and try to your best to understand what the heck Toni Morrison is saying. But once you get to it, once you understand, this is a pretty good book. I truly believe Toni Morrison's Beloved is a masterpiece, and every American should read Toni Morrison's Beloved. But it's still a little bit confusing. Regardless, it would be remiss of me to not try to make some sense of it. This is a Spear Point review after all, and I am obviously your most handsome and favorite book reviewer on YouTube. So, without further ado, let's get to the point. So, Beloved takes place in 1873 Cincinnati, Ohio, on Bluestone Road at a house known simply as 124. At first, I thought it was I-24, like it was a house by the Interstate 24, which runs from Illinois to Georgia, but I quickly realized that I just can't read. In all seriousness though, who writes their ones like this? I don't know what font this is, but I've never seen a one written like that unless I was writing Roman numerals, which I do a lot, but still, I am hoping I'm not the only one that was a little confused about that. But anyways, at 124, we follow a previously enslaved African-American mother, Sethe, and her daughter, Denver. The two of them have lived alone in this house for about 8 or 9 years now since the death of Denver's grandmother, Baby Suggs. But there's also a third presence looming around the house, an entity, a ghost in the form of an infant prancing around the home. We learn there's been strange occurrences throughout the house that has driven away Denver's two older brothers, Bugler and Howard. But both Sethe and Denver welcome the ghost, especially Denver. Since the ghost turns out to be her unnamed baby sister, whose tomb has nothing but the words Beloved etched onto it, this family is nothing if not broken, seemingly beyond repair. But then comes a man by the name of Paul D, who Sethe recognizes to be one of the previously enslaved men from the plantation they both come to know as Sweet Home, a place that is anything but sweet. Paul D has just recently escaped his chain gang and has been traveling north for quite some time, searching for Sethe. What he comes to learn is that this home is riddled with history, full of remorse and terrible loss. With the entrance of Paul D, the home begins to shake violently as it knows of the damage his presence will cause to the two women of 124. By damage, I mean healing, of course. The house and the ghost of Beloved seem keen on keeping these two accustomed to their shackles. Denver has not gone far from home ever in her life, and Sethe only goes as far as her job in the kitchen. So, Paul D screams at the ghost to rid them of its torment. They've suffered enough, he says, and to the surprise of everyone, the ghost indeed goes away. This is the opening chapter of Beloved. Although some of the things I mentioned are present in the novel, most of it is only hinted at here. I really adore this first chapter. Even when I first read it, I kept coming back to it because there's so many minute details that are expanded upon so beautifully. Toni Morrison has this way of throwing everything she can at you all at once without making you feel like it's overwhelming. But it does, unfortunately, become overwhelming rather quickly. The first thing you'll notice as someone who's never read Toni Morrison before is there are hardly any page numbers. Only on every other page will you see a page number. This may not sound like a bad thing at first, but once you first try recalling a passage you enjoyed, it'll quickly become apparent. That, along with the fact that there is not a single labeled chapter in this entire novel, makes writing something like, an academic paper on Beloved so much more difficult. I did that. That's what that other beloved video is, actually. That's basically what it is. I wanted to try something different. What I mean by this is there are, in fact, the ending of chapters and the beginning of chapters. There is a place where you can obviously tell that a chapter ends and a chapter begins, but none of them are labeled as chapter 1, 2, or 3. Instead, you'll start a new chapter and have absolutely no idea what number you may be on unless you're counting them yourself. Furthermore, Toni Morrison mixes character perspectives within those same chapters. So, one moment you could be reading chapter 6 and following 𝙎𝙩𝙝𝙚 in a memory. Immediately, perhaps in that same paragraph even, you could switch perspectives to what Sethe is thinking about 𝙎𝙩𝙝. A couple paragraphs or pages later, you could be then switching to Denver and getting her thoughts on 𝙎𝙩𝙝 and her mother. This, along with every other element of the story I've already explained, makes for one tumultuously confusing narrative. But, having said all that, and having read the book once more, I actually really like it. It's not the kind of book you read for enjoyment. I mean, I guess you could read the novel and have some fun, but Toni Morrison's Beloved is often derived of joy. And I mean that in the most honest and not to its detriment. It's depressing, it's painful, it's brutal, but at the same time, it's a story about finding the beauty in the brutality. It's about not letting that pain, which has brought you to your knees for so long, define you. It's about opening the door to a new outlook of life. Ultimately, it's a story about having so many yesterdays and not enough tomorrows. This novel encompasses so much history. Not the black history of America or the white history of America or whatever you want to call it. It is a terrifying but realistic depiction of human history. But it also reads as, I believe, one of the greatest of American literature. Toni Morrison's Beloved is a must-read, but it's also a must-read again, and then again. Then after a few years, come back to it and read it again, because you probably didn't understand it the first time. Because of the confusing nature of the novel, a lot of people might pick up this book and never get past the first chapter, labeling it as confused or silly, maybe even dramatic. Others will get through the first half of the book and complain about the other questionable elements of the story. The infanticide, the bestiality, the rape, the torture. It can be a little much for some, especially those who only play pretend at being an avid reader, when really they only care for being portrayed as one. But for those who stick through the entirety of the novel, for those who get past every bit of heartache, turmoil, and simple unfiltered humanity, this novel will leave you not wanting more, but coming back to see what you've missed. What I love about the stylistic choices in the lack of chapters and page numbers and the mixed perspectives is there's a purpose to it. There's a narrative reason why the story is so convoluted. Because our characters have so much history within them, it's often hard to know where the difficulty began. Where did the heartache begin? Did it begin in Sweet Home or afterwards? Was I always this way, or was I made this way? Am I allowed to be happy with all the sins I've committed, or do I deserve to rot in this house along with the wooden foundation? These questions create so many different and difficult answers that what's left is this disjointed, unfathomable, tumultuous life of endless hell. So, of course, the idea of this non-linear narrative is not only purposeful, but it's compelling. It's genius. It's absolutely beautiful. Trying to break down my adoration for this book is honestly so much more difficult than it sounds. The good news is, I've technically already done it in an essay for a class. So instead of paraphrasing that essay, I'll let you watch that video if you want to check it out. It's a lot of different things. It's a review, it's a rebinding of the book because I loved it so much, so I turned it into a hardcover book. It's so many different things. But at the end of the day, the story of Beloved is something that every American should read. And if you haven't already, you need to pick up a copy. With that being said, I'll let you go check out that video. But for right now, my name is Jalen. This is the 𝙎𝙤𝙘𝙧, and I hope you enjoyed the video. That's not my outro, but that's gonna be my outro this time. Cause I don't know, I'm losing it. I don't know.